Welcome to Commander Community, the show where we discuss everything, the people, the places, the things beyond the tabletop of Magic the Gathering's most popular format, brought to you by Star City Games.
I'm Anthony Alonji.
And I'm Sheldon and Anthony. In each episode, we'll address one or more hot-button issues in the Commander community. We'll talk about Commander's current events, the intersection of our hobby with life in general, whether that's nerd culture, music, food, booze, or anything at all, really.
And I am 100% likely to ask Sheldon, what the hell is wrong with you?
And I am 100% likely to still not have an answer. Our issue this episode is the social contract. What is a social contract? You know, one of the great discussions in the history of Commander revolves around the social contract. And it's even spelled out in the philosophy document, if I could read for you.
Please.
Commander focuses on a resonant experience. Each game is a journey that the players share, relying on a social contract in which each player is considerate of the experiences of everyone involved. This promotes player interaction, intergame variance, a variety of playstyles, and a positive communal atmosphere. Now, Anthony, I know what we meant when we wrote that.
Sure.
What's that mean to you?
So where I go to, the shortest I can put it is we before me. It's an interaction. Solid. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Solid. I was saying solid.
Yeah, we before me. It is fundamentally the idea that you don't have to write it down on paper and sign an agreement in order to get along with other people. That's social contract at its most basic. And I get why the Commander Rules Committee still wrote this down, because it's, you know, you're disseminating a philosophy, a belief. But essentially what it means when you're sitting down with other people in that moment, Sheldon's not looking over your shoulder. Sheldon can't give you a piece of paper to sign. You know, there's nobody there available to really make sure that you're behaving. You still manage to behave somehow in ways that the rest of the table find acceptable and that they are willing to behave as well.
So the big picture idea of the social contract, don't we do that all the time already? Constantly.
I mean, we do it a little bit less now than we did in 2016, but we still do that a lot. There's how you relate to people at work, your place of business, or over telework, how you relate to people on a playing court, a basketball court, on a sporting event, how you relate to people when you are in relationships with them. All of these things are social contracts. They're generally agreed rules of behavior. They're the kind of things where when my children would misbehave, I would look at them sternly and say, excuse me, we're trying to run a civilization here. Stop. Whatever you're doing, stop. That's a violation of the social. Whatever they were doing was a violation of the social contract. Usually wasn't a big deal, but it was. You know, it could be a big deal. It could be something enormous, or it could be something, not as big a deal, like a Magic game. Let's be honest.
Right. I guess that one of the criticisms is that social contracts in general fly in the face of competitive endeavors like games. Yeah. Like a hardliner is going to argue that the object of the game is to win, and as long as you're cheating, or as long as you're not cheating, right? As long as you're staying within the rules of the game, you're fulfilling the social contract.
Now, it's a different social contract.
Right. Other people will say that the object of this game is to have fun. How do we reconcile the sort of hard and soft lines?
We don't. We do, but we don't. We recognize that there's going to be a difference between the two. And this is not, this is saying is, if you are deciding you are playing competitively, you are deciding to abide by one social contract. And if you are deciding not to play competitively, you are abiding by a different social contract. It's, and the social contract for competitive play is, following the rules of a sanctioned event, or rules that perhaps have been promulgated by, players who enjoy, say, competitive EDH play. To me, that's a different social contract. I accept that it's the same format. I would suggest it's different social contract, which is, there's nothing wrong with a different social contract. That is absolutely fine. Just recognize which rules you are playing by when you play. And I think a lot of the tension here is that people are experiencing a we before me, style of play versus the me before we. Now, that doesn't mean that CEDH, just be super clear. CEDH still abides by a social contract where everybody at the table has agreed by certain rules, and you're still behaving yourself. You're still having fun. You're still doing things that everybody at the table is totally cool with. But that's the social contract. That's the piece that matters, and that's why so many people revert back to this. Well, rule zero, talk, and it annoys a lot of people who don't want to talk about rule zero, but it keeps reverting back to, well, talk to each other. Engage with each other.
What?
And it's never not going to be the answer. It doesn't matter how many people don't like hearing rule zero. It doesn't matter how many people don't like hearing the word social contract.
Right.
That's it. That's all you've got. And if you don't want to do that thing, then you don't want to do that thing. Find people who also don't want to do that thing, and there's your social contract.
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions is that there is a social contract. And there's the meta social contract that we talk about in the philosophy.
I like that. The meta social contract.
Meta social contract.
Yeah.
But there's not, people say, well, it's part of the social contract of Commander to not play mass land destruction. Well, no, that's not actually what we're talking about here.
Right.
The meta social contract is, again, considerate of the experiences of everybody involved. Right. So if everybody involved is on the same page, then the social contract has been fulfilled. Sometimes you need to be a little more clear about the parameters of the social contract. Sometimes you have to, as you suggest, and I know this is crazy, that people talk to each other and communicate well in order to get this accomplished.
And people will make mistakes. People will, like, I've been in games, plenty of games. You've been in tons of games like this. Everybody's been in games like this where everybody's like, well, okay, yeah, it's a pretty casual deck, but I'm trying pretty hard with it, whatever. Okay, sure, we all sit down, we all play. And then somebody does play Armageddon or plays Obliterate or whatever they play. And you go, okay, we didn't spell that out. I guess can we next game, can we not do that? Yeah. Either by not playing that spell or picking your moment with that spell better or maybe just playing a different deck. And as long as everybody at the table is like, I guess that was a little bit of press, and kind of back off one. I thought that this was a certain thing, but it's not. Then I would make the argument nobody's violated the social contract there. It's okay, because the social contract involves being forgiving of people, and people make mistakes or just judgments of error. It's not even really a mistake. I mean, I haven't really met the person, the pure pub stomper really yet. I guess I've met them, but I've been able to deal with them in the context of the game. But I've never been in a situation where the pub stomper just dominated the table and just ruined everybody, and then gave an evil cackle and then got up and left or whatever, or demanded we all play another game, with the same decks. Nothing like that has ever happened. So just bring it into the conversation. Bring it back to the conversation that we all need to have. We before me. And often the violation comes from somebody thinking, well, this is fine in my other group. In other words, they're putting them before we. That's not as bad, but it's not helpful. It's the we before me, the we that are here right now in this room, virtual or otherwise, playing a game. That's what comes first.
Yeah, I think it goes in the face of what people normally expect from games. But one of the parts of the big social contract in other games is that you're not going to cheat. That if you, it doesn't matter if you're playing Commander or you're playing Monopoly. You're not dipping into the bank when somebody's not looking and grabbing an extra 50. So there are plenty of things. There are plenty of unwritten rules that you still follow, even though that they're not specifically spelled out in the parameters of the particular game that you're playing.
I think of them as like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At that bottom tier, you've got some basic human behavior. You're at that table, You're with people, maybe they're from different backgrounds or different experiences. You treat them like human beings. You don't act like like that's always going to be part of the social contract. If you're ever playing with me, you're ever playing with Sheldon, you're ever playing really with anybody who's got half a soul, you've got a social contract there to just, behave. And then next layer up. Okay, we're all playing a somewhat competitive endeavor, right? So, no cheating. Play by the rules of the game, the technical rules of the game, make sure that you do the things. Then above that, you've got on top, if you manage to pass through that gate, there's another one, hang on to your hats, folks. We have 3 social contracts we're putting on top of each other. Sorry to inconvenience you, but we have another one that says, if we are playing the commander as it is put onto the commander websites originally conceived, then we are all just here to have a good time, and breaking the format is not the point. You may have another one on top of that. You can take that piece of paper off the pile, put another one on top of it. And what it says is, we are in a CEDH environment here, folks. So you're all agreeing that it's okay to kind of jam at each other a little bit. Okay, yeah, all right. Or take that piece of paper off, put the other one back on, or put a different piece of paper on top of it. Then on top of that, you've got other ones. So maybe 1 or 2 more. But that has to do with the tenor of your group or the specific play style, or everybody hates Armageddon or whatever it is. So, or you play Flash or you don't play Flash, or you ignore the ban list, you don't ignore the ban. So you can put these agreements on top of each other. And what does it create? It does create complexity, and people don't. And I get it. It's going to make it harder when you go to an event and you want to play or play online with people you haven't met before, and people are going to be like, okay, so what's the deal? What's the contract?
Yeah,
and there's no way around it. There's no way through but through.
Some people probably long for the simplicity of not having to think about the complexities of social contract. Here I'm coming to this tournament. It's time to win, and if I get to the finals, and I find out that if I scoop, it will cure my opponent's daughter's cancer. Better hope she likes chemo, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Although again, it's a matter of different contracts. Like you could decide that scooping that in these situations, fulfills maybe the bottom of the hierarchy, right? Maybe that's maybe that's where you should be. But yeah, obviously, if you are going, there are things that are much harder about a competitive event, i.e., the level of play. And then there are things that are a lot easier. It's so much easier just to focus on the goal. And if that's your orientation, great. I've been at tournaments and I've been there, and I feel it. I feel it in other endeavors as well. There's this part of me that's deeply competitive. And I think that's why I love Commander so much, is because at the time it sort of simulates it a little bit. You can have moments of it, but it's not the point. The point is something very different. And we keep getting caught on that gear.
Yeah, well, clearly, as designed, as conceived, the idea is to be something different than traditional competitive Magic. That we're doing something that fulfilled an empty need. Right? There was no there was nothing doing what we were doing at the time, and people needed. So, sometimes people need a break. Now. Yep. There are plenty of people who want to apply the rules from competitive Magic to, even if we're not talking about the high powered end, they want to. Well, I'm just here to win, and that's fine. And certainly, every time I sit down to a game, I want to win the game. But at the same time, That's not my biggest goal. My biggest goal.
You're not just there to win. That's the point. That's the word, right? Just. I'm just here to win is different than I'd like to win.
Yeah, I would certainly rather lose in a spectacular way than win in a boring one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Please. I get very little joy at the point. At the point where somebody looks like they've just got the game. It's like, I think you got this. You okay if we, I even ask at that point, if somebody else has a lock on the game, sometimes I'll even ask for permission. Sometimes I won't, depending on the lock and the player. But sometimes I'll ask, I think you got this one. We got 2 people sitting. Why don't we either you rush your loops along, or let's shuffle up. You okay with that? And then usually the person goes, yeah, I think I got this one, unless you've got a counter spell or you've got a whatever, something
Right.
in there. Yeah, no, I think that's where we are. All right, we're done.
One of the arguments against social contracts in general is that you have to be in the know, right? So if you're a stranger to that particular society, you come up, you're somehow disadvantaged.
I think everybody, in most cases, right? Obviously, if you're, sometimes I think of the Wild West Saloon, right? Where the one stranger from out of town comes in and there's 3 players playing poker who've known each other since they were born in this dusty town, and the one player has to sit down and has to figure out the social contract. Usually all 4 players or however many players there are all coming at this, and they're all the dusty stranger. They're and they're worried about it. And so what's the solution? Talk to each other. Nobody's going to pull out a 6-shooter and take off your head. Again, it comes down to that. Don't feel like because you don't know the group that you're joining that somehow the group is judging you. Don't feel like you can't talk to them. Don't feel. I don't want to tell people how to feel, but I'm hoping that they don't feel so insecure that they can't admit that they don't know. I think isn't that part of it that a lot of, especially in a testosterone-based population, sometimes there's this desire not to let on that we don't feel secure saying, I don't know. Can somebody please explain to me what you'd like? And some people don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, to some extent, people have varying levels of social anxieties, and they don't want to be the one to come in as your dusty stranger and try to enforce their will on the group. Or
that's another great reason. Yes.
Or they feel they feel like, well, who am I to say anything because this is theirs. So what do we tell the folks who need a little nudge in that direction?
Well, you used a great pronoun. You said because this is theirs, and it's like, no, you just like we before me is meant to get people to think beyond themselves. It's also meant. I mean, me is still in it, and we is still in it, and you are part of we. So once you're at that table, you're just as important as anybody else, and it's not meant to tell people never advocate for yourself. It's meant to tell people you are an important signatory, into this social contract. You are important too. Going back to the habitually popular 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the key habits is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And what a lot of people read that as is just shut up and listen. And it's like, no, it's shut up and listen and then speak. And
there's definitely a follow on there.
Both are important, and the order is all that Covey ever was saying. And it's the same thing here. So ask first, learn, figure out what's going on, and then if it looks like you still want to, and now do your math. Now you're important too, and now do your math and say, well, if that's the social contract that you guys are doing, I'm going to find another group. Or, you know what, I can't find another group. It really sucks. So how important is it to me to either, join this group or not? I mean, it puts people in a difficult position. We don't always get to play the game we want to play. Sometimes the players aren't there for it.
How can we, how can we find the common ground? We've certainly talked before, and when we talked about Rule Zero, talked about the idea of, okay, if the idea of the other the other folks in the group isn't your idea of fun, find where the common ground is. Either borrow a deck from one of them, lend your decks to the other people, or the person who's in on the outs. But it's still that's all wrapping in the specifics of how we do it is wrapping in to the idea of, again, consideration. Just consider the experiences of the other people, and we really want to focus on the fact that this format is intended to be fun, even when it is being other things, right? Even when it's being broken, it wants to be fun, and it's
a game.
Yeah, and honestly, people's like, well, no other Magic format needs a philosophy, and they're right.
Right. Yeah. And is that such a bad thing? And it wouldn't be a bad idea by, whoever's out there that's listening, not Sheldon, you've already had yours. You're done. Okay. But like if anyone wants to create a new format, I mean, and pull together the right people to generate a format. I mean, people have tried, right? People do it. Even Wizards has done it. In some of their instances, they've done it well. In some instances, less so. And that's true of everybody. I mean, and there's people out there, and they keep, there's still other promotions of things like Canadian Highlander and other things. Other things are out there. I can still remember the format of, what was that, 250 card decks.
5-color.
5-color, thank you.
Or chromatic, I believe they called it.
Yeah, I remember those. There were actually a few people there with decks and such. I remember being at events where people were playing. This was back 2000, whatever, thereabouts. But that was. I mean, there have been people that have put together decks like that. I was so glad when Commander came up before, because it meant I didn't have to have a 250 card deck. I could just do 100, right?
Traditionally, a format is just a rule set. Is you can play with these cards. Well, I mean, really, for the most part, for the majority of Magic, a format is simply you can play with these cards.
Yep.
There have been variant formats where, like you said, 250, where there's specific deck size, or singleton that we used to call Highlander. All these kind of things. There are a number of, but people think that when you say format, when you evoke the term, that you're talking about a hard and fast box.
Right.
And that's all there is to it. And for the most part, that's generally all you need, because then the other elements of the social contract work. Okay? Well, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to verbally abuse my the people that I'm playing with, things like that. Just the rules of polite behavior.
Right.
But one of the reasons, in my estimation, for Commander's overwhelming popularity is the fact that it takes it a step further.
Yeah.
That it's, here's the box, 100 cards, Commander damage, color identity. Here's the box. Now, there's something on top of that. There's a motivating factor. It's not just about winning the game.
Yeah. The earliest articles I wrote, I remember writing because I didn't feel like there was space in the conversation online about, at that time, this was true. At this time, it's obviously been a long time since it's been true. But at the time, there was no voice really for people to speak up and say, what if you just wanted to play a suboptimal card and not care? Right? What if you just wanted to do that? You didn't care if you won the game or not. And what I really appreciated the most about Commander, when it first came out, or when it emerged as a more popular format, was that it structured a lot of what I believed needed to be true. That there needed to be a place out there where players, and this is, by the way, there are some players that are more competitive than not, and there's some players that are more casual than not. But I think a lot of why we put ourselves into little bins is because we don't always feel safe in all the spaces where we're in. There are times that I'm a competitive player. There are maybe not that competitive, but there are times where I try to be a competitive player. There are times when I am a casual player, more often than not, more casual than not. But I believe everybody, there are times, I'm sure you are a competitive player. There are times, I mean, I've heard tell of you maybe occasionally winning a game. And same thing. And there are other players who are seen as competitive players who love playing casually when they can. And part of solving this problem is to understand that we're all on a spectrum, and we slide along that spectrum. We don't just sit there at one point on the spectrum. It's a more dynamic picture than that. It's not static. It's not I'm 85% casual or I'm 55% competitive. It's right now at this moment I'm feeling a little casual. Right now at this moment I'm in a tournament. I'm going to feel really competitive. And it's a matter of shifting it back and forth. I'm sure there are amazing ball players out there that just like, shooting around, basketball players. LeBron James probably likes playing horse from time to time. Right. Maybe he plays it competitively depending on who he's with. Maybe he doesn't care. But I suspect that there are times when he just wants to let loose. Maybe when he's with children, right? And doesn't feel like he has to jam the ball in the net and go, in their face, social contract. right? We before me. Everybody's capable of it. Everybody does it. And
That
no reason why we
9-year-old
can't do it
wanted
more
to
often.
get dunked on.
Yeah, a 9-year-old just asked for it. She was standing in the key,
I mean, if I'm not going to fly over her, but what's she there for in the first place?
Exactly. Now she's on a poster. She should say thank you, right? No, that's not. So in any endeavor, we have moments where we slide along the spectrum, and we think if we think about these things in terms of that hierarchy of contracts, instead of trying to think of it as just one simplistic thing. And I know Twitter doesn't help us do these things, but there complexity and nuance are possible. And the other conversations we have, whether on Discord or elsewhere, if we can start to introduce, you've already done so, if others can start to introduce these notions of complexity into the conversations, that people don't just assume that you can solve it all in 140 characters. And then but then what do I do when I'm playing with people? Well, speak in more than 140 characters. That's the moment for nuance.
Yeah.
That's the moment for complexity. It's not a race when you're sitting down to have a game. At least before you start. It might be a race once you start if you're playing in a CDH format, and that's what everybody's agreed upon. But up to that point, just sit down and talk to the people and just have that conversation. It's not. That's the part that's not a race.
And again, I understand because of some people's social anxieties that conversation might be a little difficult.
Yeah,
but
sure.
So if you need help with ways to generate that conversation, ask. Ask your friends. Ask ask the people that give you advice on life. Talk to people and say, I'm a little uncomfortable doing this thing. How do I help myself get better at doing it? So don't feel bad about feeling bad about it, but also look to find a way to get yourself through to the next step.
Yeah. Well said.
So we're going to continue the discussion about the social contract after the interlude. But for now, it's time to recognize our community contributor of the week.
So Magic is about the gathering. And here at Commander Community, we like to recognize those who go above and beyond in making the gathering worth it.
This episode's community contributor is Jake Boss, who happens to be an editor at Game Nights, but that's not why he's here. Last year, Jake started a Discord server called Content Creator Tech Help. There are currently nearly 200 members on the server. He's helped a bunch of folks, from those who are very new to those already up and running, with sometimes very confusing technical difficulties of being an online content creator.
Yeah, and that's the spirit of someone, they're using the skill set. Jake's using his skill set. Others do this too. They do a wonderful job of, they make their community better for no reason other than it just feels to them like the right thing to do. It's almost like a social contract that they're following. It's just, it's fantastic. And none other than the voice of Josh Lee Kwai. And when I quote Josh, I need to put on my glasses to make sure I don't get any words wrong.
Right.
So, momentous moment here as we look down, okay? Jake is one of the great hidden gems in the MTG community. He has an incredible wealth of knowledge, talent, and enthusiasm. I cannot think of anyone better to go to for advice about content creation. And I say this with a ton of sincerity since I go to him for advice all the time. End quote.
Yeah, I reached out to Josh for that. It was like, hey, I'm thinking about, we're thinking about the Jake as the contributor of the week. And he's like, that's a great idea. He'll love it. And two, that's the kind of person he is, right? He just wants to make his community better. So thanks to Jake for defining what it means to be a community contributor.
And Sheldon, I just want to put a shout out there again to anybody out there who has nominations or ideas for community contributors. We're looking for people who contribute in all kinds of ways. We have so many different wonderful, diverse aspects to our community. We're looking to hear about all of them, the talents that folks offer, the perspectives that they bring. Just let us know about them. We know about a lot of people out there. We got a lot of episodes to go and a lot of different slots to fill. We'd love to hear about and promote people that you believe are out there doing their best to abide by and promote a great social contract among all of us.
Yeah, I was gonna swing back around to that.
Well,
I
you
think
took too long, so I just swooped right in there on top of you. You know, you're a little slow there, Sheldon. What the hell is wrong with you? I got to take the moment now because I'm pretty sure we're going to agree the rest of the episode. What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, I believe, every time I'm on somebody's stream, whether it's Olivia's on Tuesday nights, which has some of the best chats in Magic, or I was on just the day before yesterday with the Brazilian CDH community on their stream.
Nice.
I believe that the social contract idea, the philosophy of Commander, is what led us to having this great community. That not that we that we founded the idea of being a community, but that because we worked it into the format's DNA, it's attracted the kind of people who want to build communities in the first place. And the reason the Commander has such a great community is because it attracts the people that want to have great communities. And of course, then they build them.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. That's nice. It's a nice thing to do. So we got some community responses. You put out a call, I believe, to that community.
To the social medias.
To the social medias. And the tubes responded.
They did. Yeah, so I went to YouTube. I mean, to YouTube, to Twitter, to Facebook, to a couple of the forums, some of the websites, and I asked some people individually as well. I like this one that we got from All Hail Bolas. Now, before I read Anton's quote, we got a lot of the social contract means, and then some paraphrase of what's in the philosophy document. You know, just thinking about what everybody else.
Lots of smart people out there.
Yeah. Anton said that the social contract is the unspoken agreement that players will respect each other's needs and focus on empathy, consent, and cooperation to ensure everyone who's sitting down to play Commander has the best chance to have an enjoyable game, rather than being focused only on one's own performance in the game.
Great minds thinking alike. We before me.
Yeah. Well, consent is
that's a nice word to use. Nice.
Empathy, consent, and cooperation probably spills over into a lot more than just a Commander game. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We get down into the deeper levels of the hierarchy, right? We get down to that lower, that more fundamental, that more foundational social contract there is present in Anton's response. I really like it. I think it's fantastic. Friend of the show, Benny Smith, also put it, he put it pretty succinctly, putting the enjoyment of we, here it is again, putting the enjoyment of we at the front of mind in both the cards you choose for the deck and how you play. A great summary. I just want to say, I came up with my thoughts on this before I read all these things, and I was really happy, especially from Anton and Benny, who I admire a great deal, both of them, and I just love that we saw them come in with stuff like this, because that was really helpful. And there are others out there, other responses. Why don't you take us through a couple of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to comment on
sure.
This sort of what follows on from Benny's there. It's thinking about things before the game as well. When when you build your deck, I'm a big proponent of build casually, play competitively. That once you get in the game, if a brother is down, put your boot on his neck. But especially if he's from Minnesota.
You're lucky I didn't have that philosophy. We're going to talk about what the hell is wrong with you. Hey, 2 shots of my Commander, and I could have taken a third shot, and maybe you're just proving my point. I said, you know what? I'm not doing that to the father. I'm not doing that to the godfather of the format. I'm going to do the right thing. I have a social contract that says, don't do that to a brother when he's down. But you don't have that. You hurt me. No. You hurt.
Well, there are times when it's the right play to keep somebody in the game when you could take them out.
I should have listened to Ojitai when he whispered in my ear. Just do it. Do it.
Crush.
Next time.
Yeah. What you need to do. But yeah, I mean, I really think it's important to think about the kinds of games you're going to play. Yeah, and it is. And again, it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum that's on. And that's I think another misinterpretation a lot of people have. So, well, it means only building a certain kind of deck. It doesn't. It means thinking about who you're going to play with and then building appropriately. And if you don't know who you're going to play with, then I'd say there's a middle ground that's pretty clear. There's a I keep calling it the core demographic.
Right.
So think about that. If you want to, you want to fudge one way or the other, that's fine. But if the only thing that you have is a turn 2 kill deck, you're not gonna necessarily fit with every group that you sit down and play with. If you go to an event and want to get in some cool games, you have to think about I think you have to think some about the kind of
You're right.
people that other players that you're going to play with, and the desires of of those people.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you're a bad. If all you have is a turn 2 kill deck, congratulations, you have fulfilled a certain set of social contracts. You have prepared yourself for a certain hierarchy of needs, if you will. You have fulfilled a certain set of contracts. There is another set that awaits. It has some of the same contracts that you've already applied. Okay, you're ready to play in that other format. We're just a deck away from that, and a little bit of thought from that, and all of I guess this boils down to buy more cards and build more decks. That's not really exactly the moral compass I was aiming for, but I guess if it helps, sure, buy more cards and build more decks. But come prepared to an event with your CEDH, your more casual decks, and a certain array. I don't show up to events with a CEDH deck. Maybe I should. I usually show up with a deck that won't embarrass itself. If I'm in a group of 3 other players playing CEDH, maybe they eat each other alive a little bit, and I'm okay. But chances are it loses if I play. But it's still something that I'm proud of and want to put together and it pushes the envelope a little bit. But I also show up with decks that don't do that, and which still, even within that range, there is still a spectrum that you can fulfill. And so, if you got your turn 2 kill deck, that's all right. You're on the go ahead in the right direction, but you still have more to do.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the important part. Is again the bigger picture consideration, which is what Mookie on MTG Nexus kind of gets at when they say, to me, in the context of EDH, the social contract is an implicit agreement with the other members of my play group regarding how people are going to act, both with regard to deck construction and also with regard to actual gameplay. Depending on what sort of meta you're in, the exact terms of that agreement may differ. Perfect. And this is important.
Yep.
And they list 4 bullet points. Yep. Players should try to play decks that are on average roughly the same power of the level of the play group. Makes perfect sense. The corollary to that is you can play a stronger deck occasionally, but if you do, switch to a weaker deck afterwards. What do you think about that point?
I think it's a fine rule to have. I think that this point among the other points is a beautiful illustration of how a social contract can develop within a group that knows itself well. I think that other players who enter into Mookie on MTG Nexus's group may wish they knew the rules a little bit, and so they're going to have to talk about that, right? That's not going to be something that people just commit to memory. But I like the rule like a lot. I practice it I guess I've been subconsciously practicing it quite a bit. Sometimes I'll put a strong deck out, even if it didn't win. If it just seemed to do a lot to the table, I'll just be like, maybe a little less Anthony on the next deck, right?
There have been a couple of times when I've played my Intet deck and we get to an end of the game, whether I've won it or not. And I remember, I don't want to play this deck against my friends. Right. It's fine it was with strangers in a higher power situation, but this is definitely not it. Because it becomes oppressive. And Mookie's third bullet point basically boils down to: don't build a deck that will make the rest of the table miserable. And if, there are people who we call griefers who only seek to make other people miserable. Right. Please don't be that person.
Right. And like I see a lot of, say, on social media, there's a lot of chatter from people, friends of the show, really smart, wonderful, thoughtful people. You can just tell that part of them, they certainly have a style of play that's like, hey, why not land destruction? Let's not blow up all the lands and stuff. And I think that I would like to think, my hope is, I've not played against all of them. My hope is that they have one of those decks. They play the deck. Everybody understands it because, hey, I follow you on Twitter. I know what you're going to do. And then maybe they've got another deck, like, so even if you're as part of your online personality to kind of do that, to be a bit of a creeper, I think people who maybe read those accounts think that, oh, that's okay for me to do that all the time because so-and-so who's a bit of something in the Magic community says that they do it all the time too. And I think that part of it's interpretation. It's like, look, sometimes people put on a little bit of a mask out there and they say, hey, why not blow up everybody's lands? I haven't really seen that many games involved where too many players do that all the time. They usually don't play more than a couple of games before the rest of the table gets, you know what, maybe you're looking for another table.
Obliterate and win is fine with me.
Yeah.
It's like, I have Avacyn in play, obliterate, all my stuff stays alive, nobody else has anything.
Right.
Why don't we go to game 2?
Yeah.
That's fine with me. Armageddon on an empty board just makes it crazy.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of stuff. And people are like, well, but if that's what I really like, then why can't I play that way? Well, if you can find 3 other players that want to do that,
right. Good
then
for you.
You can have a discussion with them, and if you found those 3 players, maybe take note of their identity so you can find them again, because you may have trouble finding them, 3 other people.
So Mookie's fourth point is players should have, and this is one that comes up, players should have reasonable threat assessment. Focus more resources on whichever player is in the strongest position, and don't pick too much on players in a weaker position. So Mookie would not put his boot on people's necks.
Yeah, I like this I see it as usually a tactical consideration more than a cultural consideration. I think it works fine as a cultural consideration. I would not blame anybody. If I was entering a group and they all said, okay, but you can only attack the person in the strongest position, I'd be like, ooh, I'm not sure we're going to, so is it life total? Is it number of permanents on the board? Is it number of non-land permanents on the board? Is it, number of poison counters? Is it, what does it mean to be in the strongest position? And are we going to get into a bunch of arguments? I'd probably still join the game, but I would expect some arguments and some discussion, because that gets pretty deep into the nuances of a multiplayer game, which can get pretty complex pretty fast. I like it as a tactical note because I find that usually you're going to find if you eliminate one player too quickly, they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs while the rest of the table goes on. That's the social contract part.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want anybody sitting too long. Yeah,
you don't want anybody sitting too long. But also, you may wish you had not got rid of that player.
Yes,
you may wish that So I like the idea of taking even down. It also creates a nice competitive tension. The part of the game that is competitive, it's always like, oh, okay, we started at 40, now we're all at 15. Now what happens? I mean, anything could happen from that point. The rush player could win. The combo player could win. Control deck could just seize control of the game. Anything can happen. That's why I like it. I suspect that's probably why Mookie on MTG Nexus likes it as well. But I see it as a little bit more of we're straying a little bit here, in my opinion, from the cultural to the tactical. It's okay for there to be a blend of both. People have their opinions on this social contract. This is a valid one.
Yeah. So. So Verdell Shannon, who we've published an article from on the official Commander website, says simply it's about agreement/discussion, but then breaks it down into 4 big points. First being sportsmanship. Sore winners and losers ruin the fun for all.
Agreed.
Right? Just be a good sport. Sometimes there are times when someone has sort of gone outside the boundaries of what I've considered a social game, a good social game, and I'll say something like, "Yay, I'm not playing Magic."
I've done that too. I've done that too. In fact, I think it happened in Roanoke last year. I was in a game where it was just awful. I won't bother getting the circumstances. I reacted, I wouldn't say poorly, but suboptimally. I essentially gathered my stuff as quickly as I could and just got up and left because I was just like, I was so upset. I didn't want to break the social contract.
Right.
And I managed to leave my commander on the table, the little mat that I had, and my little die count, just because I was just so get out, Anthony, get out. You're not in a good space. Go, go, go. And I came back, and one of the players came over later and apologized for how the game went. And I was like, it's not. I made a sharp comment or two, but I didn't attack anybody personally. I just did one of those, yay, wow, wonderful, what a fun game, and got out. And I apologized back because and he handed me the stuff I forgot. And I was like, yeah, that's how upset I was. I'm really, not my best moment. I just needed to get out of that situation. So we all have been there. We all have been there.
Again, it really, in the big picture, doesn't matter who wins and loses the game.
Right.
The perfect game, the best game to me is everybody got a chance to do something.
Right.
To move toward their goal. Right. But eventually somebody is going to win. Absolutely. But as long as everybody got to contribute, then that's the kind of that's what a good game is. Not one person who's land screwed or one person who keeps getting targeted or whatever. Even if that person is the sort of acknowledged best player, don't target them just because of that. Make the tactical decision. And I think part of the culture is finding that good balance to the tactical decisions that you make in the game.
Right.
Verdell,
there are other points too. Verdell had, awesome points.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the other one was fair play. Set a standard of what is or is not acceptable within a given group or a game. Are lands off limits always? Only target powerful lands. Is targeted land destruction of stuff like Cradle or whatever? Okay. How about turns decks or combo?
Wasteland that Cradle.
Out, yeah, I think that those kind of conversations are usually we pick like a couple of representative things like. Yeah, knock out the non-basic lands if you need to, but you're like Armageddon, just boring to most of us. That usually says a lot about how the group expects to play. It usually, to me, it says something about mass discard too.
Yeah.
Although with Tiny Bones coming, I want to be able to mass discard, but I'm not gonna. I think the challenge I'm going to take with Tiny Bones decks is to do it in the context of the game. And to encourage people to spend out their hands, or like if any player can discard a card to do a thing. But if you do, Tiny Bones might get you, right? Yeah. Like that'd be fun. And that would work at any table, I suspect, that I'm at with Verdell, because maybe if somebody's talking about mass discard or mass land destruction, if they're talking about one, they're usually talking about the other. People like having some options in their hands. That's what cards are. And people like being able to play the options that they have. Again, it's all about options. If I have no options, I feel like I'm in a room with no windows or doors, then why the hell am I here?
Well, I think this point illustrates the fact that there are some commonly accepted sort of off-limits strategies, that a lot of people just really, really dislike. So if you're going to go with one of those strategies, I think it's something that you talk to the group about first. If you sit down at a table and go of people you don't know, be warned. I have an Armageddon in my deck, or I have a back to basics in my deck, or whatever it is. I think that's okay. I think that there's a common conception of the kind of things that we're going to run into, and if you're going to be outside those, I think it's reasonable to at least mention them beforehand.
Yeah, if you have to go all the way back to Urza's block or prior to find an effect that is, primary in your deck, then maybe you want to tell the table about it, because that was, there was a lot of imbalance in power level of cards. I mean, certainly there have been mistakes since, but in terms of broad blow up everybody's lands for 4 mana, kind of stuff, or what back to basics had to offer. If you got to go back that far for something like that, you might be pushing your luck a little bit. It's probably a good thing to talk about.
Again, I think it's not to say that those aren't viable strategic lines. It's that a lot of people aren't fond of them, and you should probably give them fair warning.
And there's a difference between them. I think what I see a lot of confusion in the community is there's a difference between mass discard, mass land destruction, and maybe even competitive EDH, right? Like
Right.
there's two different things happening there, and I think they get tangled up together, and we need to kind of separate them out a little bit and say, no, you could be thinking that it's fun for the whole table. You could be trying here with mass discard or mass land destruction to do something kind of, slow moving and maybe too slow moving, over here, and that's a different kind of cultural issue than the mix between CEDH and EDH and two different players throwing up the same table and not talking about that. They both require conversations to untangle, but if people start to say, well, you play too competitively to the player who has a very slow burning mass discard deck, it's not going to ring true with that other person, and that's going to create more hurt feelings. So understand the differences, what these things are. They're feeding different parts of the hierarchy, the different parts of the social contract.
Yeah, and Verdell's third point is about the power mode. It's not, and I say this all the time, it's not what a deck does, it's when the deck does it. And I think the consideration and the conversation about time is way more important than just sticking your deck in a power number. Right?
I agree.
Okay. What you do on turn 13 is fine. Whatever it is that you do on turn 13 is fine. If you're doing it on turn 3, then it becomes problematic, right? So just again, that's part of your consideration going in is also when a deck does something, and it is an extreme violation of the social contract for you to tell the lie, my deck never does this fast.
Right. That is. Nobody believes you. Nobody believes you. Especially if the deck has cards that are commonly known to work together. Oh my gosh, well, how did that happen after I tutored for 3 cards? And
after I tutored for them.
And made everybody watch me shuffle and I took 5 extra turns. I mean, that's just, wow, that just never happens. Like, dude, shut up. Just shut up. Get out.
So Verdell also believes that forming a play group is part of the social contract.
Yeah.
That sculpting the group together. He says commanders works best in pods that play together regularly. For the most part, I agree with that. People can adjust to each other and reach an understanding about what sorts of needs the other person has. So developing a play group becomes part of the social contract. The arms race related to new tech and new cards versus each other, spending or not because of budgetary restrictions, changes of life and happens. So you develop your group. You don't just form a group and the 4 of you play together. You also the 4 of you grow together.
You know what I thought of when I read this paragraph, Sheldon? I thought of dinner parties. Okay. If you have a group, I know you have a group.
Yeah.
And Mary Janice and I have groups and friends that when we pull them together and we invite them over, we know what the experience is going to be like. We can experiment with that. We can play with that. We can move past some of the foundational discussions you need to have about is there going to be a dessert? Does everybody bring something? There's some foundational stuff that you can just blow right past and get to the next level and advance and deepen your relationships with. And that doesn't mean though that dinner parties only work best. The percentages suggest that probably most of the best experiences will probably be with that group. And it will still be really cool every once in a while to do something totally different with people I've never had a dinner party with or never had dinner out, never eaten out with, or whatever it is. Because it's the new possibility. It's the new exploration. It's you do that, or you work with, you do this all with vegan stuff, or whatever it is, that's something new to try. And that to me is part of both parts are essential. Verdell doesn't suggest that, that's fine. Yeah. The point remains. So there is it's nice to have the same group together all the time. It definitely helps. It definitely probably helps a lot of the conversations, but just don't go too far in that direction because you miss out on the new player. You'll miss out on that new experience that's coming at you. You'll miss out on that great dinner party.
Well, I like the dinner party analogy because we can think about, okay, I'm going to invite Anthony and MJ and their 2 friends over for a dinner party.
Yep.
And I know that Anthony's friend is a vegan. Right? It's part of the social contract that I don't go, well, too bad. I like steak for dinner. And
Right.
that's what we're having.
Right? Or you tell them, normally steak doesn't come off my stove like this. Or on my oven. This is weird. How did that happen on turn 3? I don't know.
But so, part of the social contract again is thinking about the experiences of the other diners.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say because you have one vegan that you have to make the entire meal vegan.
Perfect. And no vegan ever expects that I've met. Well, okay. Well, some the ones that I keep inviting back. Right. But the vast majority, just like the vast majority of people, are that nobody expects everything to go their way all the time.
Right.
And I want to bring this back to this idea of like, we're in this game, we're in this community, and a lot of us skew young, a lot of us skew toward whatever our gender identity, maybe a little bit of testosterone coursing through the system a bit at times. And there's that desire for control, like every human endeavor, particularly ones dominated by the demographics that our game remains dominated by. There's that, if I don't have control of the thing, and the game even feeds into that. There's even a whole archetype or multiple archetypes of control decks. Like if I can't control the environment like I can control the board with my deck, somehow something has gone wrong. It's like, just relax. Take it from two old guys. Just ease up. Just a smidge. And
Lighten up, Francis.
Lighten up, and it's okay if this doesn't go your way. And I don't just mean the game. I mean the culture of the play. If you end up in a pod with people who don't play your style, maybe they're not evil. Maybe there was just a misunderstanding. And that's part of the social contract too, which is to say, hey guys, thanks for the game. I'm going to take off. Thanks for your time. Just, good stuff. Maybe don't forget your commander card and die and mat as you go.
Don't.
But maybe a little bit more grace.
Salty.
Maybe a little more grace or a little less speed as you dart off. But just kind of, it's okay. There's the next game awaits. And the next dinner party, if anything gets burned the first time around, at a dinner party, you got another one coming up next week maybe, and just set up the next opportunity for yourself. There's so many thrilling things out there to look for. That's what a social contract gets you. I mean, we've talked a lot about what goes into it. What do you have to give up? What do you have to do in a social contract? Why do these social contracts exist? They exist because life becomes so much more pleasant. We get these iterations of opportunities that we can just keep going for. Why? Because we know that basic structure is still there for us when we want to re-engage it, and we'll try again. That's why the social contract exists, is for the benefit of it, not just to make people do things they don't want to do.
Yeah, right. I think the last social media comment we'll go to is from John Mace Musner on Facebook, who says, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean that you should do a thing. Right. In the context of Commander, there are too many players that justify unsportsmanlike conduct in a socially defined format, which is a defining characteristic of Commander. This makes power level discussion so critical to set level of expectations. In our play group, we promote the Wheaton rule frequently when a player steps out of conduct desired outside the norms. And of course, the Wheaton rule is basically don't be a dick.
And just want to give out a shout out to John for quoting Star Trek 6 on that one. That was
right.
I like that. Maybe it was a paraphrase, but it was still really good. Intentional or not, I liked it. That's the idea that was originally advanced upon the formation of the format, or early on the formation of the format, of the secret of the format is in not breaking it. That's why I believe it's a different kind of social contract. Like, people can use EDH however they want to. They can use Commander however they want to. They want to create an offshoot of the format, or create a format that operates a little bit differently. Like CEDH or other things that are out there. There's a lot of stuff out there that could come out of Commander, and that's fine. The original format, as it was meant to be played, is in the secret of the format is in not breaking it. If you want to do something different than that, then articulate the social contract, which I think the CEDH community has done. And I think other people have done it in other groups and settings. And we've all done it locally in terms of I play Armageddon, I don't play Armageddon, or whatever it is.
Right.
We all come at this the same, but just because we can do it, we may have everybody in my Thursday night group, when we do meet, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again, but when we do meet, we all have Armageddon in our collections. I haven't seen Armageddon get played in 12 years. You know, we could do it. We could all do it, but
Yeah.
we don't. And there's something to be said for that self-restraint once you get that understanding, especially with a group that you expect to play with for a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm currently reading a book suggested by one of my old professors called The Art of Taste, or The Articulation of Taste, or something like that.
Okay.
And the idea is it talks about food culture as a mirror to the developing American culture from the tables of the founding fathers. So it talks about how we built this republic, you know, how Jefferson and Madison and those people built the republic, and it lines up the development of what we call, you know, what we now call refined taste,
Yeah.
as far as food,
Yeah.
being refined taste as far as society is concerned, as far as developing a responsible reaction to the culture that you're forming. So it's been pretty enlightening, and it's fit really well into this discussion that we're having right now.
Yeah. Neat. Love the book recommendation. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think
All right,
thanks to all those players, those community members who spoke up. There's so many of you that we couldn't get to, but some great comments, great feedback back there.
Yeah, thanks to everybody on the various platforms who contributed, and we'll certainly be happy to ask you again for your opinions on things. While there's still plenty of work to be done, it's time for us to wrap this episode of Commander Community. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to follow, like, subscribe, and ring those bells. Anthony and I would hate for you to miss an episode in which his initial question continually goes unanswered. You want to tell these folks where they can find you on social media?
Yes, they can follow me in my search to find out what the hell is wrong with Sheldon by following me on Twitter at Anthony A. Alonji. You can see the address right here. And you can also find me at Facebook, Anthony Alonji.
I'm on Twitter and Facebook by my name, Sheldon Menery. Please tune into my other show, The Command Share, every Thursday here on Star City Games and YouTube. Also on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern in the U.S., you can catch me on the Commander RC Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/Commander RC, doing battle with the other 3 members of the Rules Committee, plus some special guests. You can frequently find me on any of the channels of the free Commander RC Discord server, even sometimes doing a lunch bit where we'll do Q&As. And then, of course, finally on Sundays, you can find me right here on Star City Games, writing about the best format in Magic history. As always, I'm Sheldon Menery.
And I'm Anthony Alonji. Thank you for letting us be part of your community.